Hello all. Today we are back again with the conversation of STIRSHAKEN. But today we will be discussing in detail the technical framework and how does the STIRSHAKEN works in the call flow. For that we have in conversation with Mr. Kashyap Dhamecha, who is the product manager at HoduSoft. To start with our first question, what exactly is STIRSHAKEN and why is it creating so much importance in today's telecommunication industry?
STIRSHAKEN is a suite of protocol which is designed to combat the caller ID spoofing. Basically, it will not mitigate the caller ID spoofing, but it will give the option to the terminating service provider whether to trust this call or not, and based on that, they can take the decision like should I transfer this call to my end user or not.
How does the STIR component work and what role does it play in verifying caller identity?
So STIR is a secure telephony identity revisited. So it's basically related to the caller ID of the call. So here how the caller ID verification happens using the STIR is when the call is originated from the originating service provider, he attaches one additional identity header which contains few extra information like what is the attestation level, what is the caller number, what is the calling number, and sign that information using the private key of the originating service provider, and then sends it as an additional header in the SIP invite along with the call. So whenever the terminating service provider receives this call, he extracts the information from this identity header, verifies from the public key of the originating service provider, and identifies like which attestation level is attached with this call, and based on then they can decide like whether this is a trusted call or verified call or not.
Could you explain the SHAKEN component of the framework and how it complements STIR?
Second is a secure handling of asserted information using the token. So basically it detects like STIR is implemented by the service provider in a correct way or not, or what service provider has to implement to achieve this whole STIR and SHAKEN scenario.
So thanks Kashyap. It was a very good explanation of how you explained the complete STIR and SHAKEN and how it complements with each other. So now could you please explain how the modules and how the call flow is, complete model is being set up?
Okay, so now let's say the call has arrived on the intermediate service provider. So what intermediate service provider needs to do is they need to pass on this information without modifying anything. So identity header has to be traversed from source originator service provider to the destination terminating service provider without any modification. So identity header should remain same, and also the caller and calling information of the call has to be same throughout the intermediate service provider. So intermediate service provider do not require any kind of authentication if there is an identity header present in the call. If the identity header is not available in the call, then they can authenticate the call and then transfer that call to the next intermediate service provider or the terminating service provider. Okay, so now let's understand with the example where the call is being sent from originating service provider to terminating service provider. So whenever the originating service provider sends the call out, first he authenticates the call, like what is the caller, whether the caller is known to the originating service provider, whatever caller ID caller wants to set is known to them. Based on that, they detects what is the attestation level that needs to be set. So basically here in attestation there are three options. One is the fully attestation, which is the A, in which the originating service provider knows the customer, like this is my customer, and whatever caller ID he wants to set is known to the customer, so he can set the full attestation, which is the A. Second is the partial attestation, in which the originating service provider knows the customer, like I know this customer, but whatever caller ID he wants to set, he is not sure like whether this customer is allowed to use this caller ID or not. So that is the partial attestation, which is the attestation B. And third option is gateway attestation, which is the C, in which the service provider is not aware about the caller and he is also not aware about the caller ID that is being sent to the call. So according to the authenticity of the caller, attestation level will be identified in the authentication process. Authentication service will identify what is the attestation level that needs to be set in this call. So once the attestation level is identified, additional information like what is the caller ID that we are going to send in this call, what is the calling number that we are going to send in this call, and the attestation level, all this information will be sent in an identity header. But before that, it will be digitally signed, or we can say encrypted by the private key of the originating service provider. Once the identity header is ready, it will be attached to the SIP header, SIP invite header of the call, and then this call will be sent to the either the terminating service provider, or we can say the intermediate service provider. Okay, so now the call has arrived to this terminating service provider. So what terminator service provider has to do is, first they need to verify the call. So in the verification process, first they will retrieve the public certificate of the originating service provider. Once the public certificate is retrieved, then they will identify like this certificate is issued by the trusted certificate authority or not. Once that is also identified, then the attestation level and the additional information will be retrieved from the identity header. Based on that, they will decide like call is from the trusted caller or not. So here there can be the three outcomes. Either the first one is the validation is failed, second is validation is passed, and third is the identity header is not present in the call. So even the retrieval of the private key is failed, or the certificate is issued by the non-trusted certificate authority, still it will be considered as the failed validation. If everything is okay with the certificates, details are matching with the identity header and the call, then it will be considered as a pass result. And the third is the call is not entered to the system with any kind of identity. So here there can be the three outcomes. Based on the outcome, the terminating service provider can decide like whether to allow this call or not, and if they are allowing the call, if they want to additionally write anything in the caller ID, like this is the verified caller or this is the potential spam call, they can add it to the caller, and then finally the end user will receive this call.
Kashyap, that was quite a detailed explanation of the entire call flow. I hope you got the entire how the STIRSHAKEN works and how it is implemented in the entire call flow. So now we will be talking about the benefits of the STIRSHAKEN and how it is being an advantages for this telecom industry, and how the call spoofing and the call scam can be avoided.
So basically, it will not totally mitigate the caller ID spoofing, but that is the first step towards the combating with this caller ID spoofing. Because of this caller ID spoofing, nowadays people is losing their trust on the telephony system. So once this STIRSHAKEN is totally implemented, people will start gaining the trust. Also, once the trust is back on the telephony system, business will also grow. So that will be also beneficial to the businesses, and also the financial loss that is happening to the customer, they will also have a benefit to using this STIRSHAKEN.
Thank you, Kashyap, for giving us a detailed STIRSHAKEN explanation and how it works in the entire call flow. Thank you so much for taking your time out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me for this conversation.